Do you accept that desire is a product of life?
Yes.
And do you accept that a desire that is hatched within you means that life has caused you to ask, and the reason that you feel the feeling of desire at all is because you have asked, and the larger part of you has already become vibrationally the fulfilled response to your request. We're very specific about that wording. In other words, can you feel with us for a minute that desire itself, the feeling of desire, of the accomplishing of it or of the not having of it, that the very desire itself means that the larger part of you has already achieved the request, and that everything that you feel around the desire, if you feel exhilarated, it means you've caught up with it. If you feel discouraged, it means you haven't caught up with it. But can you hear us when we say that desire means, the fact that a desire exists at all means that a larger part of you has gone to a place that the rest of you either has or hasn't gone? Step one says life causes you to ask, and when you ask, the larger part of you becomes the vibrational equivalent of what you've asked for. So if you hadn't asked, and if the larger part of you hadn't already become it, then the desire wouldn't exist at all. So what we're trying to trick you into acknowledging is that the fact that you even can acknowledge that the desire exists means it has already been vibrationally fulfilled. Because if it had not been vibrationally fulfilled and you weren't there with it, you wouldn't feel any gap. Or if it hadn't been vibrationally fulfilled and you weren't feeling wonderful, you couldn't feel wonderful. In other words, we're just wanting to bring you, maybe kicking and screaming, into the understanding that when you ask, it is given, it is already done. So the reason that we're approaching it in this way is because the only thing that ever prevents anyone from having a full expression of the desire that they seek is that they are vibrationally out of sync with it, and pretty steadily so. So if you could come to really know that all things that you've been asking for are already, in the vibrational sense, already accomplished, and the things that you still desire that haven't been accomplished. And can you feel that the only difference is the things that you have accomplished you had less resistance about, and the things you haven't accomplished you have more resistance about. And we want to point out that the more or less resistance usually has to do with how big it feels to you. In other words, most of you, some things seem easier, so you accept them. Some things seem harder, so you make it harder. So we have to find a way of helping you to break down those feelings that some things are more difficult to create than others. And for most of you, the things that feel more difficult to create are the ones that involve other people who are also making choices.
Yes.
And if we can convince you that you had no control of anything anyway, except your own vibration, then it won't matter to you that you don't have control of your lover, or you don't have control of an industry. In other words, if you can accept that you've never had control of those circumstances, and that the things that you have allowed yourself to receive have only been because of your personal alignment, then you can let go of a big wad of resistance all at once. You follow that? Did you follow that?
Yeah. Is it as simple as taking my attention off of those things when I'm disconnected?
Yes, it is. But we've never. Here's the thing that's so interesting and really easy and truly effective about this question. Apparently, you've heard us when we say it's only your resistance that's keeping anything from happening. So you say, well, I'll stop that. I'll stop my thoughts of resistance. I'll take my attention off of them. But we've never known anyone who could take their attention off of something just by putting their brain completely on pause for an extended period of time.
Right.
Because life is going to keep stirring. When you want something, it's active and it's going to keep coming up. Here's another thing that's really interesting. When you really want something, which means it's really active over here in your vibrational reality, it's going to keep showing itself to you as it stands vibrationally in your vibration. Now let's start at another place here, because this is out here on the leading edge in a new place too. To the degree that you don't want something, there is an equal and proportionate desire of something that you do want. In other words, a small I don't want creates a small I do want. A big I don't want creates a big I do want. In other words, there is always a balance. So every subject that is ever activated, let's say you see someone who has a new series and it reminds you how you want one, and in fact that is exactly the kind of series you want, and you would be exactly the person for that part. So you see it and it activates within you. You can tell how you've been doing by whether that makes you feel exhilarated or discouraged. Because when it's activated, where you are on that subject is where you rise and what you feel. In other words, your gap becomes immediately apparent to you. So when you realize that all day, every day, you're being shown, it's like the conversation we had earlier, you're being shown where you are in relationship to what you want. And if you could hear us when we say, all you got to do is get in the vortex. So you say, well, is it as simple as just not thinking that thought that makes me feel negative? And we say, well, it sounds like it would be that simple, but it isn't that simple, because that's where your set point is, and it's where you last left it, and every time it comes up, it's where you're going to feel it, unless you, in a determined way, do something about moving yourself on the scale. That's the work. In other words, you can't just say, okay, here's where I want to be, here's where I am. Not good. Simple. It would be as simple as just not thinking that and thinking that, if you could do it. But the reason it's not simple is because your radio can't be on 6:30 a.m. and hear what's being broadcast on 98.7 FM. The frequencies have to match up, and you have to train your vibrational dial, so to speak.
And training it by going to deliberate places that make me feel good, which are off that subject. Now,
we are glad you asked that question, because it was the next logical question along this way. So your desire's over here, but your set point's over here, your habit of thought's over here. So something happens that aggravates your awareness of where you are, and it doesn't feel good. So what would be a shortcut into the vortex? Would a shortcut into the vortex be think about the subject of hand, to which I've already trained myself here?
No.
Or would a shortcut in the vortex be, I want to feel good, and no matter what, I'm going to find a way to feel good? So then you just insist.
But it's got to be on that subject.
Well, it doesn't.
Could it be picking up my dog?
It doesn't have to be on the subject. In other words, you can get in the vortex on any subject. You could have 10 things you want and 9 of them not working, and one thing that's working, and you could think about that one thing and you'd be in the vortex. But here's the thing that is tricky about that. You're going to keep watching television, and you're going to keep activating that specific thing. And if you don't clean up that specific thing which comes up over and over and over again, may keep you out of. So it is very helpful. In other words, we'd use any excuse in the world to get in the vortex. And when you get in there, it's easier for you to contemplate this subject. So here, the answer that you just gave to yourself. Use any subject under the sun to feel good enough to get in the vortex where it feels good. Then in there, through the eyes of Source, consider your series and tune your vibration to that. Can you feel the difference?
Yes.
And before you know, it will just feel like the next logical step to you. It seems a little confusing, because people are used to more cut and dried behavior or action, which doesn't work for you, but you think it does. So you want your vibrational work to be applied in the same way. But vibrational work is emotional work, and emotional work is feeling work. And unless we can convince you, and you can walk away from here with a renewed determination that the series is important to you, and so is the boyfriend, but they are second and third in importance to your feeling good. And you can feel good without either one of them. And if you will accept that and practice feeling good without the manifestation of either one of them, until the absence of either one of them is not a determining factor in how you feel, then you'll get both of them. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah. And believe, like you say, that there are 150 things out there that can line up with me, which will make me feel good. They don't have to be on that subject.
That's right. We wanted to give you the shortcut, however. We want to give you the shortcut. You see, if we could convince any of you in the existence of the vibrational reality, and if you could feel with the same assurance that we have, because we understand the laws of the universe, that what you want is already done, then you wouldn't have to make it up in your mind. In other words, if we could convince you in the validity of this vibrational reality, and you could start tuning yourself to conversation about it, then it would be easy for you. If you knew what we knew, you could just say, well, I want it. Be weird.
Yeah.
In that. So people say, so you're clearly joyful because you went to the beach, because you listened to a tape, because you were listening to music, because you made lists of positive aspects, because there are so many things to focus on that make you feel good, and so you did. So you run into somebody and they say, oh boy, you're joyful, you must have got your series. And you say, it's right on schedule. They say, oh, on schedule, but did you get it? Did you got a contract? You say, that's really irrelevant. I've already asked for it, and so it's done. And they say, come on. In other words, it would feel odd to most to act as if your success has already come before it's evident enough that everyone can see it. But if you can be one who feels the joy of your success because you know the laws and you've lined up with the energy, and therefore you know the inevitability of it, so you're having your celebrations in advance of the manifestations, but they're just as valid, just the same. Now people will be amazed at the speed with which they see manifestations that they know you want showing up in your experience.
And they are and not beat up on myself when I lapse and get out of the vortex, because that's what happened over the last couple of weeks, you know.
So now we're going to give you a series of things that will help you. If you have a lover and that lover goes away and you feel lonely, you're not lonely because you miss your lover. You're lonely because you miss your connection with yourself, and you're just using your lover as your excuse. Really, can you get that? If you want a television series and it comes and then goes, let's say they give it to you and you do the pilot and then it never goes any further, and you feel disappointed about it, you're not disappointed because your series went away and you didn't get what you wanted. Your disappointment is that your vantage point is so different from the vantage point of who you really are. So if you can hear that all discomfort that you've been thinking is because of this or that or this or that or that one or that one or that one, all discomfort is only about this alignment, as is all illness. It's only about you're not yet closing the gap. And then you realize that you have complete control over that. That's the first step in really gaining deliberate control of your life. But this speaks more to what you just said. Before there can be a step 3, which is you coming into alignment with this expanded part of you, there has to be a step 1. And when you do as you say and lapse, all you're doing is fine-tuning. All you're doing is more step 1-ing. We would never, ever offer any sort of criticism ever about you having what you're calling a lapse. We wouldn't even call it a lapse. We'd call it a clarifying step 1 moment that is setting up a better step 2 and a better step 3. And we would say, anytime we found ourselves in negative emotion, we would say, this is a contrasting moment, this is a step 1 moment, and it's going to serve me enormously well. And that would cause you to move from step 1 to step 3 fast. Your alignment is not like a college degree where once you achieve it, it is yours forevermore. It either is or it isn't in the moment. And step 1 is important to the process too.